we're living in a time where the devil has tools that he's never had before, ever. For the first time in human history, you can backbite when you're alone, because you have a cell phone and you can just call somebody up and start backbite. It used to be if you were alone, you couldn't backbite or do namima or do these things. But now you can backbite on your chat room. You could text and backbite. And the Prophet ﷺ talked about the dangers of ghiba, because much of what goes on now on the internet is really ghiba. When you leave somebody puts something up on the internet, and then all these people have to say these terrible things about them, whether they deserve them or not. They just feel compelled to, and it's all done with anonymity, because they're cowards. People won't come and say to your face, but they're cowards. So they'll do it with anonymity, but the angels know who they are. You can be Killer 23 on the internet, but the angels know that you're Abdullah, the son of Abdullah, and they'll write that down. So you can't get away with it. There's no anonymity in the unseen world. The other aspect is the television and films and music. One of the interesting things about Islam is the tension that the ulama had with music. Nobody can make a blanket statement that it's mujma' alayh. If you read Shawkani and Nail al-Awtar, he has a section on this and talks about the khilaf that existed about music. Imam al-Ghazali, Abdul Ghani al-Nablusi, and other great scholars have sections about sama', which is a sacred type of music that they thought was a good thing and permissible. But the ulama were very wary of music because they understood how powerful music is and how seductive it is and the effects that it has on the soul. This actually goes back to the ancient Greeks. Plato in the Republic, Socrates is the voice that he uses, but Plato in the Republic actually outlaws certain types of music in the Republic because they were so harmful to the soul. And ethos theory is the theory of the effect that music has. In fact, Al-Farabi, who wrote Kitab Al-Musiqa Al-Kabir, the big book of music, which I have in my library, it's a huge book, very heavy. It's one of the earliest works, serious works on the science of music. Al-Farabi was known for being able to make people laugh, cry, become sleepy, or become excited based on maqams that he would play on the oud. He could literally make people cry. And this is well recorded. And this is what you find when people go to concerts. They get very agitated. They have to move. They don't know why, but they have to move. They can't stop moving because the music is having an effect on them. There's demonic effects that sounds have, and then there's angelic effects that sounds have. And so the ulama were very concerned about the demonic effects of sound. And they understood that one of the things that the demons have always used is music to lure people away. In fact, in the hadith about Dawood alayhi salam, who sang the Psalms, he had a beautiful voice and he sang, which is musical, but it was angelic. Shaytan got a little band together and he put it on the side of the road, and the people on their way to hear Dawood would stop and listen to the band of Shaytan, and they would forget about Dawood. And so this was the tension that the ulama had, and it's very important that that tension exists, because nobody can make a blanket statement that music is entirely haram, and nobody can make a blanket statement that it's halal. And so that tension is there so that Muslims never go too far into that thing. Because now you see in the West, people listen to music all the time. They're always plugged in. They get in their car, they turn on the music. They walk, they put in their earphones, and they listen to their music. And people have long playlists. They spend a lot of money on these things. And so they're lost. They don't have free time to think anymore because their lives are filled with sound. So the demons have immense tools that they've never had before, and they're using them very effectively. And we're, unfortunately, the people of haqq are not using them effectively at all. And Allah says, عَاقِبُوا بِمِثْلِ مَا عُقِبْتُمْ بِهِ. Fight with the tools that you're being fought with. The jihad of this age is between the ears. The jihad of this age is between the ears. Because this is the battlefield, is the mind of human beings, and by extension, the heart. So what I want to begin with a hadith which is muttafaqun alayh in the mustalah of the people of hadith. It means that both Imam al-Bukhari and Imam Muslim relate this hadith in their books. They relate it in a section called Bab al-Fitan. The fitna in Arabic is a very intriguing word because one of the meanings of it is intriguing, right? In other words, it pulls you in. So a fitna, the Arabs, I don't know why, but the Arabs call some of their daughters, they call them fatina, which means she's a fitna. She's somebody that causes fitna, right? In other words, she's attractive or seductive. You're attracted to her. So fitna is something attractive about it. People like fitna. I'll give you an example. You have Muslims that don't do anything. They sit around, they watch TV, maybe they go to the masjid. But when a fitna happens, suddenly they become so active. And they're on the phone, and we have to do something about this. And they really get active because fitna excites people. There's something compelling about it. And this is why in the Sahih al-Bukhari, when fitna happened, one of the greats, and this is the beauty of the Sahaba, because they were one of the many beautiful things about them. They knew that the Prophet ﷺ loved poetry. The Prophet loved good poetry. He particularly liked Ibn Abi Sult, who was one of the spiritual poets of the Jahili Arabs. He liked Labid and others. And in al-Bukhari, he quotes a poet. The Prophet himself never used poetry himself, but he listened to it, and he enjoyed listening to it at times. And he said, "Inna min ash-shi'ri la hikmah." In shi'r is wisdom. When the fitnas used to come, the Sahaba said, Ibn Uyayna relates this hadith in al-Bukhari, that they used كانوا يتمثلون بإمر القيس. They would remember the words of Imr al-Qais. الحرب أول ما تكون فتية تسعى بزينتها لكل جهول. When war first shows up, it's like a decked out woman seducing every ignoramus. That's from Imr al-Qais. When war first shows up, it's a seductive woman who's decked out with her zina. And the young men, they get excited and they run. حَتَّى إِذَا اشْتَعَلَتْ وَشَبَّ ضِرَامُهَا. Until the conflagration happens. And suddenly you're engulfed in the flames of war. وَلَّتْ عَجُوزًا غَيْرَ ذَاتِ حَلِيلِ. It becomes an old hag who's lost her husband. شَمْطَاءَ يُنْكَرُ لَوْنُهَا وَتَغَيَّرَتْ مَكْرُوهَةً لِلشَّمِّ وَتَقْبِيلِ. Ugly, foul-smelling. Nobody wants to kiss or hug her. This is what they used to quote when war started, to remind them that war looks good until you're actually in it. And then you see that war is hell. And this is why the Prophet said, لا تتمنوا لقاء العدو. Sahih al-Bukhari. Do not desire to go to war. It's a disease in the heart. But he said, if you're forced to, fathbutu, be brave. But it should not. It's a sickness in the heart to want to go and kill other people. So chapter is in the chapter of fitna, which also means civil strife. Al-fitnatu ashaddu min al-qatli. Fitna is worse than killing. Here it means persecution. So it can mean persecution. It can mean civil strife, like when you have civil wars, is called fitna. It can also mean confusion. So it has many meanings. But all of our muhaddithun had a chapter called Bab al-Fitan. In the Bab al-Fitan, it's muttafaqun alayh, tu'rad al-fitanu ala al-qulubi kal-hasir. The end of time won't come until the fitan are shown to the hearts like a mat. Udan, udan. Vertical and horizontal. And I'll get into this later, but I want to start with this. فَأَيُّ قَلْبٍ أُشْرِبَهَا, any heart that drinks it in. But the Prophet ﷺ used, if the Sahaba got it right, sometimes they didn't, but if the Sahaba got it right, the Prophet ﷺ used a passive form. It's called mabni lil majhul. Ushribaha. The heart is passively taking in these fitan. Then he said, nukita fihi nuktatun sawda. A black dot will appear in the heart. This is spiritual. It's a metaphysical meaning. If you open the heart, you're not going to see a black dot. But there, in the spiritual realm, in the unseen realm, a black dot appears. And then he said, وَأَيُّ قَلْبٍ أَنْكَرَهَا نُكِتَ فِيهِ نُكْتَةٌ بَيْضَاءٌ. And any heart that rejects it, a white dot will emerge in the heart. In other words, the beginning of spiritual growth. So the other one is the beginning of darkness, of demonic growth. And then this one is the beginning of spiritual growth. And then he said, حَتَّى تَصِيرَ الْقُلُوبُ عَلَى قَلْبَيْنِ. Until the hearts are two types only. And then he said, على أبيض مثل الصفاء. A white heart that's like pure water. It's pure. فَلَا تَضُرُّهُ فِتْنَةٌ مَا دَامَتَ السَّمَاوَاتُ وَالْأَرْضِ. The fitna won't harm it as long as the heavens and the earth are there. And then he said, وَالْآخَرُ أَسْوَدُ مُرْبَادًا. Black, but it goes little by little, it becomes black. Murbad, irbadda in Arabic means to change color, shay'an fa shay'an. تغير اللون شيئا فشيئا. It means to change over time. And this is important because this is how the darkness gets in the heart and it grows until it's completely black. Kalkuz mujakhiyan. Like a container that can't carry anything, everything spills out. In other words, goodness spills out of it. It won't contain anything. And then he said, لا يعرف معروفا. It won't know what's good. ولا ينكر منكرا إلا ما أشرب من هواه. It won't know good and it won't reject evil. So it won't recognize good and it won't reject evil. It becomes relativistic, nihilistic. Everything is relative. It takes in everything. إِلَّا مَا أُشْرِبَ مِنْ هَوَاهُ. It only sees what it has passively taken from its hawa. And so what I want to do, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. This is called the devil's traps.